Welcome to the Verified Athletics Podcast. Over 1,500 athletes have already signed up for the Verified Watch List. If you want to play college football or know someone who wants to play college football, get on there and get your transcript uploaded. You can sign up right now at verifiedathletics.com. If you're enjoying the podcast, spread the good word, subscribe, and rate it wherever you get your podcasts. Our guest today is Steve Opgenorth. Steve and I worked together at Albright College 10 years ago. He was a D2 All-American at Winona State University. He's coached at Carroll College, Albright College, Winona State, Colby College, St. Norbert. He's now the QB coach and recruiting coordinator at Baldwin Wallace. He's got a ton of experience, a lot of insight to drop. Let's do it. All right, we got Steve Opgenorth on the podcast. Steve is the quarterback's coach at Baldwin Wallace, and he is here to share with us all his stories. So thanks, Steve. Welcome.
Nate, it's great to hear from you, brother. Hope things are going well.
Yeah, well, Steve and I, we worked together when we were at Albright College. That was my first job coaching football. My first job, I should say, after graduating college. Steve, what did you think of me when you first met me?
That is a burner. That's a great opening question, Nate. Nate, the best story I'll give is we all kind of arrive at Albright College together, California, Minnesota, Colorado, Wisconsin, you name it, in Reading, PA. And I think it was a camp we ran. It was maybe your second day on campus. And it was the most basic drill you could imagine. And you wanted every detail on how to run it. I think it might have been with a middle school camp kid. That's when the appreciation of who Nate Slutsky was and is to this day started. Attention to detail guy that loved the game of football and was smarter than most. So first impressions go a long way. It certainly did with you, and we had fun for a couple of years at Albright College.
I'm surprised that your first memory of me is a good one, but I'll take it.
Yeah, amen, brother.
Yeah, well, when I started coaching, I didn't know anything. And I guess the best part about it was that at least I knew I didn't know anything. And so I could try to learn the best I can, and glad I had guys like you to lean on. So that was helpful.
Yeah, timing is everything. And man, did we get to Albright at the right time with a great bunch of coaches, but even more important, good people. So we learned from each other. You happened in a great situation, I think, around great coaches, X and O's wise, but also recruiting wise and structure wise, and all those things, paid off professionally, but also it was fun building a program at Albright too. 3 years later, we're in the national playoffs, and it was a young, energetic, pretty darn good staff that we were part of.
Yeah, I can remember now. I was from Chicago and living in Colorado, just graduated college, and I was like offered a job in Reading, Pennsylvania, which was, as far as I was concerned, the middle of nowhere. And I didn't even know, I legitimately thought that there was a decent chance I was going to be living like in the stadium, in the locker room, because when I asked Andy, who we were coaching with at the time, who was supposed to be my roommate, where we were living, he said that he didn't know, and that if I wanted to send my stuff, I should just send it to the office. And at that point, I was like, oh, I think I'm going to be living in the office. And I really wasn't sure, and I wasn't getting paid like hardly at all. And I was just like, screw it, let's do it. And it was a fun adventure, and taking me all the way to here.
Yeah, we all took a little leap of faith with the new staff and John Marska, who continues to be the head coach there. But it was all leap of faith. It was a brand new staff. We were living in offices and apartments and neighbors and whatnot. But we all did it for the right reason. We all kind of jumped in 100%, which made it fun. We're many of us young, single, eager in the college coaching profession. And I think Albright College and their football program got the best of us for the time we were there.
And you've now, I think you're at Baldwin Wallace now, also a Division III school. I think you've been at 4 Division III schools. Maybe I'm miscounting, and at least 1 Division II school. What do you think makes them different? Better, worse? What is it that people should be looking out for when they're trying to figure out the differences between these different schools?
I think for any prospect, your fit and your eventual home is really important. And sometimes level does take in consideration the options you have and what your experience will be for 4 years. So, I was 3 years at Albright College, a liberal arts school, good academics, a degree that carries some weight when you're out of there. But certainly the emphasis in athletics was there. Played in a very good conference in the MAC. From Albright, I went back to my alma mater, Winona State University, scholarship level, Division II in the Northern Sun Intercollegiate Conference, and that was a great experience. But yeah, you as a player in your 4 years, it's somewhat different. Spring ball, you've got full pads. The commitment academically is probably a little bit more time consuming, especially in the spring. Workouts, in the morning, 4 days a week. And you're on scholarship, so there's a different aura about your experience and maybe the makeup of the locker room there in terms of who's on scholarship, who's not, who's making X amount of money per year and who's not. In Division III, you don't get that. Here in the Ohio Athletic Conference, I do think it's one of the better brands of football in the country. We got kids here that love the game of football. They want it to be a part of their college experience. So it goes hand in hand what that 4 year experience is all about. But at the end of the day, there is a short separation, I think, skill and talent wise behind Division II, Division III, 1AA, FCS, you name it. More important than anything, it's about a kid's fit academically. I think socially is huge, and then certainly the football aspect and athletically has got to be a fit as well.
And you guys are kicking ass this year, right? What's your record right now?
Yeah, currently we're 6-1 overall. We got 3 games left in our regular season. A big one coming up this weekend. Kind of talking about the first kind of playoff experience in week number 8 here as we finish out and hope to make a run to the national playoffs.
I would imagine I don't know the landscape these days all that well, but I would imagine you guys are probably like a win and you're in, like as far as like winning out the rest of your games and you guys are in the playoffs, and probably one more loss is enough to do you in at Division III level.
Yeah, in the Ohio Athletic Conference, the appeal is you're going to play some of the best football in the country. On the flip side, there's a team we haven't quite figured out yet. It's won a bunch of national championships in Mount Union. So that's our single loss in week number 4 this year. You would expect them to be in the national playoffs, and the Ohio Athletic Conference usually takes 2. So you got to fit into that second one. We're hoping to do so here in 2018.
And I don't know if I saw this right, but on your guys' schedule, you guys had Mount Union at home for homecoming.
We did, yeah.
Whose idea was that?
Yeah, I'm not sure who structured it, but it was awesome. It was awesome for our kids. To me, it was awesome for our university. Not only to pack the stands, it was homecoming. It was community day. It happened to be a 85-degree sunshine, unbelievable weather. So Tressel Field and Finney Stadium was rocking. You had the number 1 team in the country, and our kids played well. It was a fun game for what it could have been for the first half. They took over and probably one that we wanted back. But for the university standpoint, you couldn't have asked for a better setup in a situation. Who planned it, I don't know, but a pretty darn good plan to be in that environment. You can't recreate those environments too often for a college football kid, and I think our kids appreciated it.
Yeah, I would say that home field advantage probably kicks up a notch on homecoming day, where you have the stadium packed, like you said, and maybe it would have been more crowded than usual by having Mount Union at in the house, but I'm sure it was even more exciting because of the homecoming atmosphere going on.
Yeah, here at BW, they do game days right, no matter what level of football. We're 15 minutes outside of Cleveland in Berea, Ohio. It's a college town. The Browns are right down the road. So you match that football atmosphere in Northeast Ohio with homecoming. Community Day becomes a big deal. And yeah, we were number 9, I think, overall in total attendance last year. You add the fact we played the number 1 team in the country, and it was fun. Stands were packed. Kids filled the hill. Student population was here, and hopefully get ourselves in the national playoffs, and it'll be a similar atmosphere, I'm guessing, if we can host one here in Finney Stadium.
And what does recruiting in the OAC look like? How does that compare to other places you've coached at?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the one thing that strikes you when you arrive here, and this is year 4 for me, so really 3 recruiting cycles. The first thing that is apparent is just the saturation of schools and the competitive atmosphere of recruiting in Northeast Ohio and really the state overall. I don't know the exact figures, but you got our conference, you got the NCAC, you got Division II programs, you got Youngstown State, you got the MAC conference in Division I. Everywhere you look, there's options for student athletes. There's options academically, athletically, big schools, small schools, and otherwise. So you're not turning over many rocks to find a hidden gem. Most hidden gems are going to be found by 1, 2, maybe 10 college coaches. So you got to put in the work, certainly put in the time. And there is a great competitive atmosphere about the recruiting process in the Ohio Athletic Conference.
For athletes, do you think you're mostly competing against schools in your conference, or is it really that mix that you just laid out there where you don't know who you're going to be up against?
Yeah, overall, I think for the right kid, that profile is somewhat contingent on the Ohio Athletic Conference competition. And now some Division II schools, that maybe 10, 15 years ago when I played wasn't noteworthy, are doing well, and offering a kid some scholarship money within a 2-hour radius of Baldwin Wallace University or Mount Union or John Carroll University. So the competition, I think, has changed the landscape a little bit over the past decade. Those are the factors that you compete against. You appreciate, but certainly you don't change the kid that you're looking for to improve your program, both in the locker room and on the field.
And what's the pitch? You got an athlete, you like him, but he's getting recruited by every other school in your conference. What's the Baldwin Wallace pitch?
Yeah, I think there's so many neat, unique advantages to BW. As I've immersed myself here, kind of appreciated the history, the tradition, um, and more importantly, I think most importantly, the people. I think we got tremendous people. The pitch, I don't know if you need a pitch, but we do need them on campus. The campus itself will kind of drop an 18-year-old's jaw. Like I said before, we're setting an awesome college town. There's things to do and people to see. 4,000 undergrads. It's a safe environment, but 15 minutes down the road is Cleveland, Ohio, with every advantage you can imagine in terms of jobs, internships, but also entertainment. Being an 18 to 22-year-old kid, you can get hit to an Indians game. A Browns ticket the past couple of years has been pretty damn cheap, so that hasn't been a problem. I know last fall a bunch of guys went to the Kanye West concert, at the Q. So those things, it's awesome. What you can take out of your experience as a college football player, I think is different here at BW than maybe some competitive schools in our conference or around the region. And then when you get out of here, the BW name, it certainly helps. Sometimes it's who you know, not what you know. And we've got some successful alums in business, finance, education, you name it. They're probably in an industry that our kids are looking at. So those are the appeals that mean something, no matter how far you are away from Northeast Ohio when you visit. The thing that jumps out at you right away, and the thing that I even noticed on my interview here, is our facilities. We do have some facilities that probably are best in the country, if not the region, for sure. We've got our own football building. Finney Stadium has been redone and packs it to capacity. We've got a turf practice field right behind our own weight room, our own meeting rooms. So we're blessed. It's not a facility that strikes the chord with the norm of Division III football. So that's the one thing in a recruiting realm that we try to sell as much as possible. And then on a visit, we get them rolling through, and they're usually pretty impressed.
Yeah, just the way you describe the facility sounds like it's a whole different ball game from any Division III school I've gotten a chance to be at. Is it like that compared to the other places you've coached at?
Yeah, it's certainly better. I think it probably compares to most Division II or FCS level schools. We just have a neat setup in terms of what our student athletes and certainly our football players are offered. It's the Packard Athletic Center. It opened in 2013. You walk in and there's a 1,200 square foot weight room that is all for athletes. We've got our own meeting rooms. Our players' lounge will drop your socks off. Even our locker room, you walk in with two big screen TVs and 170 lockers strong for everyone else. Right behind our football building is now a turf field that we can use for speed development in the off season, walk through stuff during the week. It's just different. So if you're a football kid, through the recruiting process, you're attracted to those type of things, and our facilities certainly help.
Yeah, I had always had this theory when I was coaching. I coached, good chunk of my career at Fordham, which you may or may not know. Well, you probably know is probably near the bottom of the list for FCS level facilities. Our stadium was not even a stadium; it was really a field with half a stands
Right.
and half a baseball field, and
Right.
our
Yep.
our locker room was newish, but still like probably average at best, and our weight room was basically a closet, and but we had other things to sell. We had New York City to sell, we had a great education to sell, and that attracted a certain subset of kids, and we probably lost a certain subset of kids. But I always felt a lot of times when we were going up against schools that maybe had less to offer in the academics or the location component, that maybe they got the guys that the thing that mattered to them was football, and we got the guys where the thing that mattered to them was not football, and that had a big impact on our ability to be successful because we might land the guy that everyone wanted, but we landed the guy that everyone wanted that football wasn't that important to them. So I don't know what you think about that.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think the one thing, no matter where I've been, I think through recruiting, you focus on your strengths. You take a snapshot of what that first impression might be, and you focus on, your strengths. I know visiting you at Fordham, things you brought up in terms of facilities are spot on. But at the same time, you hear the Fordham name and you realize I graduated with a pretty impressive degree, and right down the road is New York City. That's not a bad thing. I think the things that I've developed in recruiting in terms of philosophy and makeup and maybe how you develop a program, stem from our first year at Albright College. John Marska came from Teal College in Western PA. You see pictures, you roll through what they built at Teal, and it wasn't about facilities. It was not. It was about a plan and a purpose. I think a great quote that I'll always take forward is, give me a football field, give me a football loan, but give me great people, and I'll build you a championship program. And that's through recruiting. It's sometimes not all about facilities. I think for us, it is a huge strength, but it is kind of the icing on the cake because there are many aspects that we talk about that focus around our people, our alums, our staff, before our kids kind of see and go, wow, to the facilities that they're going to get a chance to compete in, to sit in meetings, to just kind of be around 75% of their day for 4 years. You got to find your fit, but I think for a program in the recruiting process, focus on your strength, and everyone is going to find hopefully one or two or many strengths that they can kind of sell the right kid through the recruiting process to attract the right team, on the football field.
Yeah, and uh, my years coaching football, of all the guys I coach with, I'd say you're the best recruiter I've ever worked with, which probably may or may not surprise you to hear, but I can't believe that I'm the first person to ever say that to you. What do you think it is that makes you different or special or good at it?
I think number one, I think timing, it goes back to timing. 2007, I get my first full-time job. We end up together at Albright, and we end up in an environment where it was a program that wasn't very good at the time. So we could develop a plan, a purpose, have goals, and roll with their goals. And I think everyone bought in, and we were able to go from 2-8 to 11-2 in a 3-year period because of recruiting. And I think personally, it's just been, myself, I try to be authentic. I try to think back to the recruiting process when I was 18 years old and some of the coaches that bored me to death, or some of the coaches I didn't want to pick up the phone. But the one or two coaches that I was really appealed to. I was appealed to because I got a chance to know them as a person. I got a chance to know their families, and that was the attraction to my experience, and me kind of wondering what would my 4 years be like at the places where coaches attracted me to want to ask questions, go in depth about what the program was about because I was attracted to them. So I guess it's a recruiting style that I've carried through over the past decade that has found some success. But most importantly, I guess, Nate, it's to be authentic. To be myself. Maybe not talk all about football or what that piece of the puzzle is going to be, but I want to get a chance to know a young man, and then for them to get to know me. And usually that's worked out pretty well, where you can build some authenticity around who you are. Don't hide anything, and you get the right kids that are fun to coach over the time that they're a college football player.
What I'm hearing you say is that you want to be the coach recruiting the athlete that they are most excited to talking to. Is that like summing up what you're saying, or are you saying something different?
No, I think that can be a piece of the puzzle. I think one of my general rules over the course of the past couple of years, the first and second conversation I have, no matter if it's in the spring of their junior year, the first time I meet them at a camp, or I give them a shout on the phone, I don't want to talk anything about the school and that, and I don't want to talk anything about football. It's a general rule. I want to know about them as a person. I want to kind of get a chance to know about their family, their interests, what they're doing outside of the game of football. I think many times a recruiter, a coach, whatever, they'll hop into a pitch and it's not about a pitch. I think most 18, 19-year-old kids now can kind of see through if a coach is being authentic with them or maybe just looking to make a call. So that's been an approach. I don't know if I've changed much since 2008, but it's worked, and it's made it an enjoyable piece of the puzzle too. Not something that I've kind of dreaded through being a college football coach. I think maybe that's somewhat different, but I do enjoy recruiting. I enjoy building relationships and seeing if there is a general fit between myself, a prospect, and their family that might make BW or Albright College or Winona State through that process their perfect fit. Because I do know that it was because of my recruiting coach that I ended up to be at Winona State a long time ago. I know it was because of the head coach. I know it was because of those people and those relationships that I ended up at a place that I absolutely took as much out of and built meaningful relationships. And I had a whole lot of fun, for 4 years. So I think it's an important decision. It's a life-changing decision. So I think it's a neat role to be a college football coach recruiting those type of kids.
And when you're, say, in the peak of recruiting season, how many athletes are you recruiting?
Yeah, it generally changes year by year. I think now where you're at, it certainly changes too. I think in Division III, you still have to have a larger pool. The makeup of your difference makers are probably those that earlier in their junior year, somewhat even the fall of their senior year, thinking about Baldwin Wallace University or even a top 25 team in Division III football. They're thinking about a possible Division I program or a camp that they attended this past summer, or maybe if they're getting a scholarship to a 1AA or a Division II school. So I think that relationship needs to be kind of processed through a year, 15 months, sometimes longer. And that relationship might take a break for a while because that kid is looking elsewhere. I did it. Many do. But at the end of the day, there's got to be a mutual relationship grown to where they know you want them as a student athlete. And then that it'll be a fit academically, athletically, and socially for them to thrive as a student athlete. So the pool is built. You try to build the funnel as quickly as possible. Right now, we're still dealing with probably 300 to 300 kids. Half of those will get some scholarships and will lose. And then the rest we hope to get an official visit and make a part of our 2019 recruiting class.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, you must be recruiting 100 kids right now, and if you're doing that, like, how are you building 100 genuine relationships that quickly? Like, you do that better than anyone I've ever known, and that's what I'm curious. Like, how are you doing that?
Yeah, I think it's, being smart about your time and who you're recruiting very early in the process. I think you can look at it as a cold call, open up a book, um, and seeing who kind of fits into a fishnet. And I tried to eliminate that piece of the process, early in my college career. And maybe that's a reason why I think I've been more efficient and found some difference makers that join programs at the Division II or Division III level that fit. Instead of opening up a book and maybe cold calling, I do like to get to as many camps and basketball games, and I just like to interact with people because I think if you can get a first impression and they get a first impression of you, very quickly kind of a gut feeling, well, this relationship can continue on, and maybe at the end of the day, you get a commit and they get a home. So really establishing characteristics you want, I think for us as a program here at BW, it's some of the same characteristics that we had at Albright College building a program. We did a nice job building it at Winona State, Colby College. Um, it's systematic, and it starts with character and leadership. You know, I don't really call a kid that I don't think I'm going to enjoy coaching. That was a quote from Bill Belichick I took a long time ago that resonated with me, and it makes sense. If I didn't really love a kid at a camp or watch him on a Friday night, I'm not going to recruit him. But I think that talks about character and leadership, and finding out about a kid as much as possible before you start picking up the phone and making calls. Two, you got to find out academically if they're qualified. And really, a piece of that is, are they a dreamer that wants to be challenged academically? They want a meaningful degree. They're going to fit into that system to compete in everything they do. And they don't want kind of easy street. BW's got a great reputation academically. We can't get in everybody, but also you kind of know the kids that you can push academically and on the football field. The third thing is find kids that love the game of football, and if there's any type of maybe not that I'm playing college football, I'm usually apt to drop them pretty early in that process, because you and I both know it's not easy. A great stat to keep is 5.8% of high school football players go on to play college football. 1.8% finish their 4 or 5 year career as a national average and walk out on senior day and say, I did it, I finished. That's a pretty good attrition rate. So if you love the game of football, you're willing to kind of go through the peaks and valleys, ups and downs, and finish. And the fourth characteristics is, are they a difference maker? I'll be honest, I think that's one thing that I learned from you, and I thought we did a good job of at little Albright College to change a 2-8 team into an 11-2 team. Don't recruit those kids that aren't going to help make you better as a program with the goals established. Be that to go from 2-8 to 5-5, or if your goal is to win a national championship, go recruit kids that can help you win a national championship. So I think instead of making it an overall kind of throw some darts at the wall and hope that you pick up some kids, those are the characteristics I've believed in. They were kind of established at Albright, changed throughout the years a little bit, but we have here at BW. And individually, no matter if it's as a recruiting coach or recruiting coordinator, kind of building a plan for your staff, that's what we've hung our hat on, and that's what's worked out pretty well.
And what can an athlete do to fit that criteria better? Like, there's like certain limitations to how much better they're going to get at certain things, but I've got to think that there's ways that they can put themselves out there, to show a coach that they have A, B, C, D, all the things you mentioned.
Yeah, I think the three things that I tell student athletes all the time is number one, to establish yourself as a difference maker, make sure that your film is out there and developed the right way. Um, I've been around coaches, and I won't say that I don't watch an absorbent amount of film, but uh, if you got a 5 minute highlight tape, wow me in the first 2 minutes, the first two plays, you get one opportunity to make a great first impression. So make sure that there's a wow factor on your tape, no matter what position you play. The second thing is make sure that the first, if a coach asks you, hey, what's your GPA? What's your test score? I am very turned off by the answer, I don't know. If you know that you averaged 6.4 yards per carry your senior year, but you don't know your GPA, that's a red flag. That usually means you're not going to be qualified academically, or if you are, you ain't going to make it as a dreamer that wants to graduate with a meaningful degree. And then, we rate guys, and I think this is huge, on what we call an acronym CCL: communication, character, and just leadership. Communication, simply, hey, do they get back to you? And nowadays, it doesn't matter if that's a text or a DM on Twitter or whatnot. If you reach out as a college coach, are you getting communication back? That's a piece of the puzzle. Character is obviously a rating if you like the kid or not. And then, do they have the it factor of being a leader? And if that's the case, it's a plus in their kind of recruiting chart, because I think that's something that you want to add to your locker room as you develop a championship culture.
And do you think of that CCL? I never heard that before. I think that's interesting. Do you think of that as being a pass fail, or do you think of it as being like a spectrum? Like some guys
Yeah.
are great, some guys are okay, or is it they either have the thing enough where you'll take them, or they don't?
No, that's a great question. We use it as a spectrum. That's how I look at it. It's rated 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. And, at times in a scholarship atmosphere, you've used that, and it's been used in the past to say yes or no. If there's a position that you're going to scholarship, the position coach, the coordinator, and the head coach kind of all say, you know what, they're pretty similar in talent level. They're similar in what their makeup might be over the next 4 years. Well, let's take a look at the CCL. And do you love the kid? Can you stand on the table and say he's going to be fun to coach for 4 to 5 years? But here, it's also used as a kid that you develop and maybe take a shot on. He's an inch too short, a step too slow, but his CCL is through the roof. So you realize those kids are going to be your 1.8 percenters, are going to be the kid that survives through his freshman year, maybe at the JV level or redshirting. And by the time he's a junior, he's invested in the weight room. He's on your academic board. He's probably on some leadership council on campus, and you can sell him in every which way, shape, or form in terms of your program. And then he's probably going to find a way to get on the field and help you win championships. So, and that CCL is important. It's a spectrum rating for us in the recruiting process.
Yeah, when we were at Albright, we had a rating system. It was 1 to 4, from what I remember, and 1 existed but didn't exist for some reason.
Unicorn. Hey, Nate, unicorn.
Yeah, for some reason, it existed that but no one ever got rated a 1. So that
Right.
was basically off the scale.
Yeah, it existed on the spectrum, but no one hit that spectrum.
Yeah, 1 was like, yeah, in case if you get Emmitt Smith coming back, as a freshman in college, and he's going to be as good as he was in the NFL. That's your 1. And then 2 was your big difference makers. You probably get a couple of those guys, maybe 5% of your athletes that you're taking are 2s. And then we had 3s. That's like the majority of your class. And then 4s for the most part were rejects, except for we had something called the G4. I think that's what you're describing right there. The G4. Those were the good. Those are the good 4s.
The G4, no doubt.
Those guys are the guys that didn't have the athletic ability, or they were close enough, right? But they weren't like complete non-athletes. But they were someone that athletically you wouldn't take, but you love them, and so you just want to take a shot.
No doubt, yep. And it's funny, that rating system was it was the makeup of who we are in that development. It has changed and kind of been reconfigured throughout my college coaching career, but overall, it has kind of systematically stayed very similar. Here at BW, we still have the 2-rated young man that we believe is a difference maker. Not easy to be a difference maker on the Ohio Athletic Conference, but if you're a 2, we would expect you to step on campus as a freshman and contribute in some way. Your talent level says that you can play as a 4-year guy and athletically compete in one of the best conferences in the country as a true freshman. A 3 is someone that you hang your hat on, you win conference championships and playoff games with. They may not play as a freshman, but they're going to contribute as a sophomore, start as a junior, and a 3-rated kid you hope will compete to be a captain and all-conference player as a senior. The G4, we dropped the G at least here at BW. He's a 4. He is the get it done and then some guy. He is your proverbial quote unquote walk on, candidate. Growing up in Wisconsin, you liken it to what they did with a number of All-Americans and captain type players that maybe weren't scholarship, but were the hardest workers in the weight room, on the field, and many of which, ended up playing in the NFL. Well, we'll take the 4-rated kid that is an inch too short, a step too slow, but he loves the game of football. He got great grades, and he'll run through a wall for you. So their CCL level will be very high. My belief is that you win with those type of kids, but in the makeup and developing a program, you can't take too many. You have to have the right balance in your locker room, and your 4-rated kid's got to carry the philosophy. He's got to drink the lemonade, the Kool-Aid, if you will, believe in what you're doing, and help you win. But I think qualifying that in terms of numbers, like you said, Nate, the 5%, that means something. And I think that's where we're doing it well here at BW, why you see us at 6-1 right now, why I think I've been able to turn some programs around because of that. If you believe in that qualification and are able to rate those guys correctly, 2, 3, and 4, I think you're able to mold and build a college football program that can compete at a championship level.
And do you think Division III schools are following, they probably have their own words for everything, but do you think they're basically doing that across the board at most schools, either that or something similar to that, or do you think that that's pretty unique to our experience?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think it is somewhat unique, and I think that's maybe an advantage that we took from our experience at Albright. You got to give a lot of credit to John Marska and the people that helped him early in his college career kind of establish that system. And if you believe in it and then you don't bend from it, I think you're able to build something special. Your 2s are going to be guys that you got to work for. Your yield on those guys aren't going to be great, but they're going to help you win. Your 3s are the backbone of your program. You've got to rate and evaluate the 3s to the best of your ability, and 4s are guys that are going to be your coaches on the field, and are 1 or 2 year players that can make your special teams the best in the country. But when you don't deviate, and I think, like I said before, one thing I learned from you is, if you don't bend from that and you really are honest about that evaluation, you're able to get those kids over and over and over again. And eventually it's tougher to be a 2 then as your program gets better. It's tougher to be a 3, and you just continually recycle better football into your locker room. And that's, that's been the fun part here. Certainly, I think we've gradually gotten better with the talent level in a tough conference, and it's showing up on Saturday afternoons now.
Well, I think it goes both ways. As your talent gets better, it also becomes easy. It's harder for players to come in and make an impact, but you also sometimes open yourself up to getting more talented kids because they're looking at you, and instead of being 2-8, you're 8-2.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the staff at Winona State that I was around, someone said this and it stayed with me. The best recruiting tool you have is winning, and that's the truth. People want to be a part of winners. I've seen it for 3 years in terms of what winning and that culture is all about, but it's got to show up on Saturdays. So that's a helpful tool no matter when you're 6-1. The guys in purple down south here in Ohio and Alliance, they won a lot. And to their credit, I think the recruiting piece of the puzzle for them does become a little bit easier, attracting at least the right player, and then obviously getting them to believe in a culture. Looking to do the same thing I think any program is to win at the highest level and attract the best talent.
Yeah, and I still had a couple questions going back to the rating system you guys are using now. The first thing is with the CCL. Um, do you think, looking back, do you ever like look back and say 4 years later, here are the guys that we rated as high CCLs, here are the guys that we rated as low CCLs, and maybe even the guys that you didn't get or chose not to recruit, went elsewhere, and then say, like, have any sort of sense on whether or not you can actually predict that well? I mean, in my experience, a fraction about an athlete the day before he arrives on campus to what you know a week later. And my thoughts on who was going to be high CCL versus low CCL, if I were like to go back in time and apply that rating to them, a lot of times wasn't all that accurate. So I'm curious what you think.
No, I think that's a great question. You go back and actually, John and I, did this in the 3 recruiting classes we pieced together at Albright, and I've continued to do this now through my college career. You kind of track who you brought in, who you lost, and the reasons why maybe they didn't develop for you as a student athlete the way you had planned. And it really goes back to the 4 characteristics that you've set out. You say, okay, do they have high character and leadership? Are they academically qualified? Do they love the game of football? Are they difference makers? And the kids that don't pan out, when you really qualify and quantify this now in terms of a recruiting process, you probably overlooked one of those aspects at least. Did he really love the game of football? Okay, you know what? If you're honest with yourself, that conversation is junior year when he was at a camp and he goes, yeah, you know what? I might go to aeronautical school, or I might decide to go to X school or Y school because they got a great chemistry program. Well, if that's the case, then there's something in the back of their mind that is saying, maybe football I don't need in my college experience.
And just to
A
clear that up,
second scenario.
I think I hear what you're saying, but I want to make sure it's not lost on the audience. But you're
Yeah,
saying like a school that maybe doesn't even have football, I think is what you're saying. And like they're
bingo.
attracted to it. Not that they're attracted
No,
because they're interested in academics. Like that's not the thing that you're pointing out. It's that they
no,
would consider going to a school that doesn't even have football.
very correct. And here in this area, like if a young man says, hey, Toledo or Bowling Green or Ohio State or Ohio, okay, that's great. Well, they're not recruiting you. Okay, so then that there's a thought they may not play college football. And is it always a red flag? No, but I think it's certainly one thing that you take in consideration when you do rate a player and you look back and say, okay, was that a fit? Most often, then the answer is no. They had a thought that they didn't need college football. I think the right kids, the 1.8, no matter if you're at Florida State, Notre Dame, Baldwin Wallace, or anywhere else, football is a part of who they are. It's a part of who their core, person is. It's the time that they give to their daily life to the game of football that is meaningful. So I think, yeah, it's a fun process to track. I think you have to do it as a quality recruiter. We've done it here over the past 3 years, and those kids that you're able to check mark off character, leadership, academic ability, love the game of football, and were they able to help us win, and were they able to, from a talent standpoint, play here at BW in the OAC. If those are true, then they're probably going to stay, and they're probably going to be the right fit.
And you can reflect back on your scholarship recruiting days when you were at Winona, but I felt like when I was recruiting scholarship, the goals were a little different. I mean, obviously the goal is to win, right? But the goals were a little different because the number of athletes you were going to bring in were going to be a lot less, and the odds that they were going to stick it out for 4 years were much higher. And so the you mentioned like 3 things. I think 3 things, maybe there was a fourth, but it was basically like athletic ability, academic ability, your CCL score, And when I was coaching scholarship, it felt like academics and CCL were kind of like a pass fail. They either had enough of it to cross the threshold, and then once they crossed the threshold, they were ranked on athletic ability, essentially. Maybe not 100%, but basically, because you're not as worried about a guy failing out of school. You're not as worried about them like just quitting the team because they're not interested anymore because they got a scholarship that is going to hold them in there through those tough early days, and then they'll get over the hump, and then they'll grow. So that was my experience coaching scholarship. Where in D3, you're really looking for your difference makers are going to be the guys that are going to be there for 3 or 4 years. That's what's the difference. How many guys can you get to stay for that long, essentially? So I don't know what you think about that.
No, I'm with you 150%. I think my experience at Winona State, where as a recruiting coordinator, you were in charge of a scholarship budget, and had to kind of fit the pieces to make sure you didn't go over that budget and decide, what player at what position was a $5,000 kid, what player in what position was a $1,000 kid. Hey, was there a $10,000 or a $12,000 a year kid, which Division II football at the time, was a big deal. It did add a little bit of pressure. It maybe felt like you had to be spot on, and you dug a little bit deeper to CCL than otherwise. I took that experience, and for the 2012-13 season, I was at Colby College, a very high academic little Ivy League school, and so your recruiting class was between 20 and 25. You had to find and identify some kids that you probably could take academically that may not be able to get into some of those schools on their own. So those experiences where your recruiting class was smaller and where your resources had to be maybe quote unquote a little bit more spot on, I think it's helped in recruiting the Division III atmosphere much the same way. I think it's easy to make amends or maybe not follow a system and try to just bring in and make it a numbers game. The more you get, the better off you'll be. Whereas I think some of those characteristics that I believed in, that we believed in at Winona State, that I learned from guys as well, and the qualifying who your high scholarship guys were, who you tipped into a Ivy League school, that's carried on. And I think that's where it's not about quantity, it's about quality. It's about those that will stay for that 4-year experience, because as you alluded to, playing with seniors at 22 years old is probably going to make you a whole lot better on the field than playing a bunch of 18, 19-year-olds that's in a cyclical cycle because you can't maintain and retain those kids in your college football program.
Yeah, you're going to be in a lot of pain if your best players are all freshmen and sophomores, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
we've been there before. Sometimes it doesn't go as good as you want.
Oh yeah. And you mentioned your time coaching at Colby, and I might have almost forgotten about that, but uh, Colby's in the NESCAC, which is like as you referred to, the Little Ivies. A lot of athletes seem to know those schools, at least especially in the Northeast, better than other D3 schools. And so they do come up a lot as like a stop for especially high academic kids. Um, what kind of athletes should be looking at one of those schools, and what do you think the football experience is there like versus other places that you've coached?
Yeah, I think that experience for me was awesome. Number one, because I grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So Amherst, Williams, Colby, Bowdoin, Middlebury, I had never freaking heard of.
Me neither, by the way. Growing up in
Yeah, I
Chicago,
mean,
so
there's no doubt in my mind that the little Ivy League, the Ivy League, I never thought uh, I would see, much less know them by name. So that experience helped me just kind of personally kind of build an appreciation for that conference, New England as an area, the Northeast, whatever. In terms of the kids that should be looking, well, number one, they do drop your jaw in terms of the kids I was able to coach based on what their freaking GPA was and their ACT score was about probably double mine at the time. But it's an awesome experience to take away from it. The football aspect that is ultra balanced with the academic rigors, and then what you're in would be with an internship, a Fortune 500 company, and the handshakes you get a chance to make as a student athlete, I think was awesome. So I think there's an appeal no matter if you're at Princeton or Yale or even like you were at Fordham, but Colby, Bowdoin, whatever. If you have the ability to get in or have a college coach get you in, I think it's an opportunity you got to take a look at just because it sets you up pretty damn well moving forward in your life.
Yeah, so you think that well, I guess from a football perspective only, how would you compare it? Not take away the academic piece of it. Should like a player that like has the grades to get in, but is not like that into it, and the football is really important to him. Do you think that there's a step like I don't want to say down, but definitely like a different step?
Yeah, it's a different atmosphere. It's a different animal. The NESCAC all the way around starts with simply your roster numbers. I think the limit is 75. So you're almost kind of coaching an NFL type roster based on numbers. The second thing is the
Based on
recruiting
numbers
process
only, I think.
based on numbers only. Yeah. And then the second thing is just what the recruiting aspect brings you. You're going to get a chunk of kids that you're able to band or tip in. There's also going to be some pretty darn good athletes usually, but the makeup of your roster are going to be kids that get in no matter if they're an athlete or not. So that means they've got the 32, 33, 34 ACT. Um, there's not a lot of those people around in the country. So it makes it an interesting makeup of your roster, no doubt about it. I think the coaching in the NESCAC is outstanding. A lot of that has to do with the fact that a lot of coaches will stay there for a long time. So not much attrition, but coaches that take the time that they have. And if you want to, heck, I learned football. I learned a lot of it because I was given the opportunity to coordinate, to dive headfirst, and with a little bit more time without spring recruiting travel, because you don't get off the road. It was about hopping from university to football program to college coaching and friends to learn, to ask questions, X's and O's. So, yeah, I value that time. I think it's a unique experience. Stadiums, atmospheres, the whole deal, traditions. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I know when I was coaching at Fordham, I really valued getting to coach smarter guys. I think it just made the whole thing more enjoyable. I don't know if you had that experience as well.
Yeah, I think it was just, they were going to be there. I mean, I can't think of one in really three recruiting cycles that left. If you recruited them, you knew they were going to be there until their senior year. That was different. There was really no off-field issues, not too many anyhow. They showed up on time. They made lists. They were excited about practice, and then they were involved with every other thing and aspect of their life to an nth degree. So, yeah, it was different. But once you kind of, I think for me anyhow, it took 6 to 8 weeks to middle through the differences. The fact that maybe you didn't have as many meetings as you would like as a football guy. You missed out on, on the field spring practice and those things. You did appreciate the unique aspects of the little Ivy League. I think that area, and then what the experience your kids had, I think was second to none.
Yeah, that makes sense. And now you're at Baldwin Wallace. You're not I don't know what it's like. But I imagine it's more hours than say coaching at the NESCAC schools. I feel like that's one of the things a lot of the coaches like about it is a little bit more friendly to having a life outside of coaching. But you're back at Baldwin Wallace and you're probably working 100 hours a week. And I know when you're maybe even more. I remember when I was coaching with you, you would be at the office at like 3 in the morning on a regular basis, and that's the life for a lot of coaches and for most coaches. But you have a baby now. How's that working together?
Yeah, how about it? The dad game is awesome, Slutsky. I've got a baby boy that is a 7-month old. He's a rock star. yeah, being a dad is awesome. One aspect that's changed personally for me is as you knew me at Albright and coaching football and being single, there was a whole heck of a lot of hours. And outside of maybe a couple nights out that we had, I was in the office, sometimes threw a pillow and slept. Maybe the best thing that happened to me is meeting my current wife, who gave me a little bit of a balance in terms of what this profession's all about, what you can take out of it, but the appreciation that you're just not a coach. It's been fun being married to Bridget, starting a family with Vance. And, the one thing I promised her is that I was making home. So there was no more sleep in the office. It's made my life, I think, a little bit better. There has been a balance. You can be a workhorse and do this thing the right way, but you can enjoy it a whole heck of a lot more with the people around you. And yeah, being married, being a dad, Slutsky, it's been fun. It's been a new role, but it's pretty rock star.
Yeah, I'm liking it on my end. Do you find yourself being more efficient with your time because you have to be?
Oh, no doubt. There's no doubt about it. I think the efficiency of great coaches is apparent when you become a parent. And I think Jim Hilvert, our head coach, does that in an unbelievable fashion. Efficiency is his middle name. There's really no reason to waste time doing menial things when you can be focused on build a program with the winning philosophy that we have here, and certainly recruiting in a way that's efficient as well. So I have become more efficient. I think I've become better as a coach because of that efficiency. But you add a balance and the people in your life that are meaningful, like now my wife and son. It's fun. Makes that aspect of coaching. I think it makes you a better coach too. I think I'm a better coach around our kids here in our program because there is that dad vision that you gain pretty quick once you start that role and you start playing that piece of the puzzle into your daily life.
Well, that's great. Well, I know it's getting late. I'm gonna let you run. Get out there and who do you guys have this weekend? Who you guys got to take down now?
Slutsky, we got Marietta College on the road. It's a big one, 2 6-1 teams going face to face. So we're looking forward to it on Saturday afternoon.
Well, I don't know if this is gonna get out before the game happens, so I'm gonna just root for you. And by the time this thing airs, hopefully you guys are 7-1.
You the man, brother. I appreciate you.
See you, Steve-O. Good luck. Steve is the best recruiter I ever worked with. He's an extreme extrovert, and he has an absurd amount of energy. I think he's a great recruiter because he really loves it. I think most college coaches view making recruiting calls as the worst part of their job. Steve's got a passion for it, and I think that passion has an effect on the athletes that he's recruiting. And it shows in the results. It really makes me think about making sure I'm spending my time doing things that I'm passionate about because I'm going to be better at them. And I think people, you should do the same. Thanks for listening. If you find our content valuable, share it. That support makes it possible to continue to provide helpful and free content to all of our listeners. See you next time.